tragic killing of George Floyd. That change starts today.
We got all four! We got all four! We got all four!
A jubilant scene in Minneapolis tonight as the police officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck has the charges against him upgraded. The other officers at the scene have also now been arrested. It's been just over a week since George Floyd was killed at the hands of Minneapolis police officers. Today, the charges against Officer Derek Chauvin were upgraded to second-degree murder. The three officers who were alongside him are now also facing charges. Earlier today, George Floyd's family visited the growing memorial in Minneapolis.
We absolutely believe that he was tortured in the last 8 minutes and 46 seconds of his life. We are demanding justice based on the autopsy findings, but more importantly, what the entire world has seen now with their eyes that they cannot unsee.
Susan Ormison is in Minneapolis tonight, and she joins us live now. Susan, what can you tell us about the upgrading of the charges and also the new charges against the other officers?
Yeah, well, Derek Chauvin had been facing third-degree murder. It's now been upgraded to second-degree murder. It's unintentional. That's what the complaint says, which is important to remember. The other three officers who so far had not been charged with anything are now facing aiding and abetting murder in the death of George Floyd. And that's, of course, what we've been hearing a lot this week. Family, but many, many protesters too, saying all four, raising their fingers like this. They really believe that all four of those are implicated in his death. They were all there at the scene when it happened and were not able to stop the compression of his neck and back, and that's why they believe that they should be held accountable as well in a court of law. The Attorney General today, importantly, Dwight, said that it is not easy to prosecute police. He warned people that it will be a difficult case. Here's a little bit more of what he said this afternoon.
George Floyd mattered. He was loved. His family was important, his life had value, and we will seek justice for him and for you, and we will find it. The very fact that we have filed these charges means that we believe in them. But what I do not believe is that one successful prosecution can rectify the hurt and loss that so many people feel.
And Susan, the Attorney General, also saying the investigation is ongoing and the charges could change if the evidence supports it.
Yeah, I mean, the timing of this is significant because George Floyd's first memorial is tomorrow here in Minneapolis. And then there will be a couple more throughout the weekend in various places where he spent part of his life. But the big funeral is in Houston on Tuesday. And the family had been saying that they wanted charges before these memorials started, before the funeral. And that was what indeed happened here. Of course, there will be review of the evidence. Convictions are harder than charges. The evidence will all have to be tested, and this is no doubt going to be a controversial case. It's difficult, and that's what the AG, as I said, has been warning. Dwight.
A case the entire world will be watching. We just showed some of the celebratory scenes outside the store where George Floyd was killed. Tell us about the atmosphere. What's it like there right now where you are, Susan?
I can't say I've ever seen anything like it, Dwight. I've been here for almost a week now, and this scene has changed quite a bit. It was much more somber at the beginning, small bits of flowers and messages and chalk drawings on the pavement. Now it's growing, it keeps growing, and today a real change in tone after this announcement, which is what many of these people had been waiting for. There was a sort of lifting of spirit, as if maybe, just maybe, says some of the people I spoke to, this time there may be a change, that this case may have been so dramatic and ignited such a response really across the United States and elsewhere that perhaps there might be some real movement toward change. And you can see there's beautiful fresh flowers here, some lovely new peonies and bouquets, and just beyond here over by the gas station, there's cookouts. Lots of barbecue going on. I saw some couches and chairs at the gas station the other night, people sitting in them having a little bit of a party, if you will. And this is where the family has come several times this week to honor the memory of George Floyd. He has an extended family from many parts of his life, and they were here again today. And I'm expecting that this will really grow tonight. I mean, it's hard to believe, Dwight, we're still in a pandemic because this place is full of people close together, but maybe too venting their frustration about the last few months as well and getting out and taking solace in each other. And we should know, of course, that there are many other people in this city who will not be celebrating, who will be worried about the ongoing relationship between police and people in Minneapolis and really throughout this country. This is just the beginning steps of what will happen as a result of the death of George Floyd.
Susan Ormiston reporting for us live from Minneapolis tonight. Susan, thank you.
You're welcome, Dwight.
Now, word of the new charges has not stopped demonstrations against racial injustice in America. In fact, protesters across the country say they are not going to let up until the officers are convicted and real change takes place. So, in Washington, police and the National Guard continue to brace for the worst. Katie Simpson is there.
Security around the White House has been noticeably increased. Officers in riot gear are now blocking all of the streets around Lafayette Square, the site of the most intense protests for the past 6 days. It comes as Defense Secretary Mark Esper suggests the president's threats aimed at demonstrators have gone too far.
The option to use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort and only in the most urgent and dire of situations. We are not in one of those situations now. I do not support invoking the Insurrection Act.
Is he going this way?
Donald Trump had warned that he was preparing to send the military to states dealing with violent demonstrations, though no governors have publicly asked for that kind of help. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Former U.S. President Barack Obama has spoken out publicly for the first time since the death of George Floyd. He was taking part in a virtual town hall on law enforcement. Obama called for some specific policy changes to address systemic racism, particularly at the local level, and he encouraged young people to maintain the momentum towards change through both voting and protest.
This is not a either or. This is a both and. To bring about real change, we both have to highlight a problem and make people in power uncomfortable, but we also have to translate that into practical solutions and laws that can be implemented and we can monitor and make sure we're following up on.
Anti-racism protests are spreading around the world in the wake of George Floyd's death. Tens of thousands of people marched through London, England today to protest against inequality in the US and in the UK. They converged on both Parliament and number 10 Downing Street, the official residence of the British Prime Minister, where some scuffles broke out. The huge protest started hours earlier in Hyde Park. Similar anti-racism rallies have been held in many countries, including France, Germany, and South Africa. People are raising concerns about a case in the GTA where an officer knelt on the neck of a black man. It happened more than a year ago and was caught on video. That method of restraint is coming under criticism given the death of George Floyd. As Lorena Redekop tells us, this is not the first time neck restraints have been an issue.
Why do you have his knee on his neck? Get the off of him.
This is the video. We first aired it a year ago. Given the case in Minneapolis, it's resurfaced.
To see that young boy with his body to the ground, helpless, his peers trying to help him, this is everyday life for people in this neighborhood.
Durham Regional Police released a statement given calls about this video, saying it was from May 2019, when officers responded to a call about a distraught male possibly armed with a knife. They say he was apprehended and not physically injured. The OIPRD investigated and found the officers followed proper protocol.
I am surprised that OIPRD, according to Durham Police, cleared this, said it followed protocol.
This police accountability lawyer who's seen the video but isn't familiar with this case is surprised.
You want to talk about playing with fire? You apply force to the back of the neck through the weight applied through your knee, and you are simply lucky. You've won the lottery if there isn't a serious death or injury.
A report from 3 years ago by Ontario's Independent Police Review Director on police use of force mentions recommendations from a coroner's inquest back in 2008. One of them, to reinforce through regular and refresher training the risk of death associated with the use of neck restraint techniques. Lawyer Julian Faulkner would like the investigation report released, along with the names of the investigators. For Black community members, it brings up a lot of fears of possible interactions with authorities.
I started this when my little guy was small. He's 24. And I'm more afraid of him, afraid for him more now than when I started this work.
Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
It has been a week since the death of Regis Korchinski-Paquette. The 29-year-old died after falling from her apartment balcony in High Park last Wednesday. It happened as police were at the home investigating multiple 911 calls. Tonight, her family says it is putting an interview with the province's police watchdog on hold. Lisa Shing explains why.
It's quiet outside the apartment where Regis Korchinski-Paquette lived with her family today. This was the scene a week ago after she fell 24 stories from the balcony to her death.
They're feeling distraught, they're feeling upset, they're still trying to find out how could this happen to their daughter.
The Toronto Sun published several details today of what sources say happened between police and Korchinski-Paquette inside the apartment before her death. That isn't going over well.
The family and council have very strong concerns as to how is information like that making its way into the media and how that is disrespectful to the family, to the memory of Regis, and to the process of the investigation.
Her family was slated to talk to the province's police watchdog as part of its investigation, but that conversation has since been put on hold.
It doesn't allow it to play out without swaying public opinion.
Questions have been swirling around what led to Korchinski-Paquette's fall. Police say they got a call that night from the family. Their lawyer says officers met the 29-year-old, her brother and mother in the hallway. She told police she had to use the bathroom in the unit, where several officers followed her, but didn't let family members in with her.
A call for service shouldn't end up as a call for death.
Korchinski-Paquette's relatives believe race played a role in the death, as do many in the community who turned out for a march over the weekend to demand answers. The SIU released a statement today saying it's imperative the public have confidence in their investigation. The SIU director has asked the Toronto Police Service that it takes immediate steps to prevent further releases of information about what occurred inside the apartment. The Toronto Police Service isn't commenting on this latest development, although its professional standards unit is looking into whether any of its members were involved in releasing details, and if so, what next steps should be taken. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The trial for the man accused of using a van to kill 10 people on a Toronto sidewalk has been set for this fall. Alec Manassian faces 10 counts of first-degree murder and 16 counts of attempted murder. A justice today set November 9th as the date for the trial to begin. It will take place in front of a judge without a jury. The trial was supposed to start in April, but was postponed because of the pandemic. Manassian told police just hours after the attack that he wanted revenge against society for years of sexual rejection by women. Lighting up the sky last night as two thunderstorms made their way across the GTA, bringing lightning, lots of rain, and even hail to some parts of our region. Today, well, there's the cleanup. It's on the way in Mississauga as the powerful storm downed trees and power lines in that city. Linda Ward has more.
The worst of the storm hit this small pocket of South Mississauga. Here on Balsam Avenue, several trees were ripped up by the roots by high winds, including these two 50-year-old blue spruce trees and this fir tree here outside this home that fell on power lines, knocking nearly 2,000 homes off the grid. Neighbors across the street watched as they fell.
I was looking out my front window in my house over here, I saw a tree come down, sparks all over there, big bangs, and then that box over there on top of the post also blew out.
This is what it looked and sounded like during the height of last night's storm here in South Mississauga. Environment Canada says they were anticipating severe thunderstorms, but this quickly became intense. They started receiving reports of dime to nickel-sized hail falling on this part of the GTA. They say they anticipated winds could get up to 100 kilometers per hour, but because it hit such a small defined area, they're not able to actually tell us how high those winds got. Well, we've been speaking with residents of this neighborhood who say this is the worst storm that they've seen.
We were very happy that our cars still have their windows intact, because we thought the front windshields would be cracked to bits and our skylights would be gone, but they're okay.
The hail actually contacted the window quite intensely, and I didn't know what it was. I thought, oh my gosh, someone's throwing rocks, something's happening. But then I went to go look outside, and lo and behold, rocks were falling from the sky.
It honestly sounded like things were just cracking outside. So we thought, kids were outside doing something crazy, because we heard that there was a thunderstorm coming, but nothing like the first sound was genuinely made us jump.
Luckily, no one was hurt, and hydro crews were able to restore power to all customers fairly quickly. So there's nothing left to do here now but clean up. Linda Ward, CBC News, Mississauga.
Colin, I caught the beginning of it, but I missed the rest of it because I was busy hiding under the bed. Wow.
Yeah, you almost want to be hiding in a basement when we have active weather like that, just to be on the safe side. Boy, it was a busy night, and we saw from Linda's story, obviously there was wind damage, and winds were a concern, but we're kind of used to that in our region of having strong winds when we have severe weather and heavy downpours that causes flooding, whereas with these storms, we were seeing more of the electrically charged atmosphere and all the lightning strikes, plus the hail, some of that nickel to up to golf ball sized. This is a rerun of the radar from last night, just over 2 hours. So I'm only showing you from 9 to what was happening up to about 11 o'clock, and you can see how those pushed very quickly northwest of us, came from the south, tracking to the southeast at about 75 kilometers an hour. Now I want to pop on the lightning strikes. Have a look at these and how it just blew up as it was reaching closer to the lake. So we were seeing lightning strikes here with those storms, about 3 to 4 strikes per second. Very, very intense. Tonight, this is what's happening currently. Well off to the east of us, there is a severe thunderstorm warning towards the Kingston area. However, because of a storm there, we have quieter conditions tonight, and that's what we'll be seeing. Our high today, 27. Current temperature still sitting at 27, and it feels like 30. Humidity is going to be something I'm going to be talking about because we'll be feeling it for the next couple of days. It eases up for the weekend. This evening, though, as I say, you can take a little break tonight. Don't need to hide under your bed. 23, overnight 14, and tomorrow afternoon at least 28, Dwight, for the high.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a Trane.
The Ford government is rejecting calls to make the list of long-term care homes most affected by COVID-19 public. The Premier says it's so inspections will be a surprise. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
Once the deaths begin mounting in long-term care homes, it becomes clear which ones are the worst hit by COVID-19. Until then, other than reports of outbreaks, the public doesn't really know what's happening inside, but the government does. The province classes the most vulnerable long-term care homes as red and flags others of concern as yellow. For weeks, people with loved ones in long-term care homes have asked that the color-coded list be made public. The government has refused. The justification has been because the status of homes shifts quickly.
Hold your heart.
Whether it's yellow to red or red to yellow, there is a dynamic nature to this list. It would not be fair to homes if we were to put out a list that was erroneous in terms of the immediate change that occurs in these homes.
Today, a new rationale for keeping the list secret, so that inspections are a surprise.
We're doing surprise visits to all the long-term care homes,
And, this gives us an opportunity, no matter if it's yellow or red, because those are our priorities, to go in there.
Quebec classes long-term care homes affected by COVID-19 as red, orange, or yellow. That province has made its list public since mid-April. Not so for Ontario.
It is really important that we be able to do those sort of surprise audits or inspections to make sure that we can understand what the state of affairs actually is in a long-term care home whenever we do go in.
I just think that's balderdash. I mean, there's just no way that that holds any water. Those homes know darn well that they're in the red category. They know darn well that they're in the yellow category. And unfortunately, the only people who don't know are the people who have loved ones that are living in long-term care, and that's just not right.
As of today, there are still COVID-19 outbreaks at 94 long-term care homes in Ontario. Nearly 1,700 residents have died. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
For much of the pandemic, the message has been stay home as much as possible. But what happens when one person in your household gets COVID-19? Experts say it can be tough to stay safe, but there are ways to reduce the risk. Lauren Pelly has a story of one Toronto couple who did everything right and still wound up sick.
I'm alive, yay! Ashley Comrie recorded this video last month after finally leaving intensive care. I feel incredibly lucky to have made it through these last 3 weeks. It was pretty scary. Weeks later, she's still in hospital on a COVID-19 unit. There's a no visitor policy, so her husband Kirk stops by to say hello on the grounds outside.
I brought it home to Ashley, and thank God she's, on the mend. I won't get to actually see her now, as it turns out, till the end of June. When the pandemic first started, Ashley and Kirk both stayed home, with Kirk only leaving on rare trips to grab groceries. I started coughing, and from there it just sort of went downhill. And the couple had no way to stay apart in their 950 square foot apartment. Both wound up testing positive for the virus in early May. Despite taking, the most precautions that we could and being very cognizant of the risk and that sort of thing, we still managed to, bring it into our house and wind up getting it. Experts say while home is typically the safest place to be during this pandemic, it's also a spot where COVID-19 spreads easily. That's particularly true in many Toronto neighborhoods where people often live in small apartments or multi-generational homes.
It sounds silly, but wearing a mask would be extremely valuable in those settings.
Others say public health officials need to put broader supports in place, since so many residents can't isolate safely in their own homes.
What we need to do is we need to make sure we know where people are getting COVID-19. And if it's outside of the home, we need to make sure that those people are not forced to return home and infect their family, and provide them with an alternative place to live for 2 weeks, make sure their family is supported.
Ashley and Kirk aren't sure they could have done anything differently. They just hope their experience shows the level of risk. I think it just demonstrates how easy it is to contact this virus. It's extremely virulent, and taking even best precautions, it can happen. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, the Red Rocket prepares for a safe commute.
Help stop the spread of COVID-19.
What happens when Torontonians head back to work and riders return to public transit to get there? We take you inside the TTC next. Transit riders in Brampton will soon be required to wear a mask.
But this is about ensuring the safety of other passengers. It's about ensuring the safety of our Brampton transit system.
Mandatory mask policy will come into effect on July 2nd. Brown says riders can wear a non-medical mask or scarf. He's also asking transit users to maintain physical distance and to carry hand sanitizer. With sections of the economy starting to reopen, a big question remains, what do you do with transit? Right now, ridership is down dramatically, which allows for physical distancing. But what happens when people go back to work or back to school? Joanna Remiliotis looks at the costly calculations in this era of COVID-19.
Help stop the spread of COVID-19.
The announcements echo in Union Station, usually one of Toronto's busiest subway stops.
Please wash and sanitize your hands frequently and avoid touching your face.
Now filled with signs to keep a safe distance. Easy to do during a lockdown, but coming out of one? Scott Haskell is the man trying to come up with a plan.
The real tough question is, when are they coming back and how many of them are coming back, and what do we have to do to plan for that?
Haskell is part of the Toronto Transit Commission's strategic team, tasked with predicting the rate of passenger return and managing the public health risk that comes with it. Problem is, there are so many moving parts.
We're carrying about 20% of our total ridership today, but if that increases to 30%, 40%, 50, 60, 70, it's not actually possible to carry people with that much space between them on a large, functioning, busy transit system. So this is a fundamental issue that we are wrestling with, both here in Toronto, the TTC, and around the transit business in Canada.
The lockdown plan has been simple in comparison. The TTC is disinfecting its vehicles more often, testing its employees regularly for COVID-19 symptoms.
Here you go. Thank you.
And providing them with protective gear as well. It's also enforced distancing protocols, including maximum bus loads of 15 people, all at a staggering cost. The agency is predicting a $300 million deficit by September, and getting back on track during a pandemic is even harder.
Right now, it's a treading water situation, and it won't be able to last for much longer.
Karen Stintz is a former Toronto City Councillor and former TTC chair. She says the TTC's recent ask for financial help from the province and the federal government is about survival, now and going forward.
Even though ridership may be low, the TTC is still such an important piece of infrastructure for the city, and it's needed for people, essential workers, for people who don't have cars. And for as people start to move around, it will be critical that they have the option of the TTC, because in some cases it may actually be even safer than taxis or Ubers.
But while the TTC can't afford to run on empty for much longer, planning to move more commuters safely is complicated. A lot depends on plans that are still evolving, from how or if schools will reopen to how quickly or slowly office towers fill back up. Toronto's downtown core alone accounts for thousands of transit users.
Let's figure out how we move forward, and let's...
Jan De Silva is president of Toronto's Board of Trade. She's had conversations with all levels of industry. They're all grappling too.
It's just that there's so many unknowns, and I think when we went into this weeks ago in March, we all had the mindset that we'll just wait for this to be over and then we can go back to normal. What we know now is that's not going to happen anytime soon. So this is why I think we're going to see businesses continue with work from home arrangements until there's different protocols in transit to help and mitigate the need to have social distancing.
For the TTC, that presents a pandemic paradox. With 70% of its operating revenue coming from the fare box, it needs more passengers to remain viable, but can't run more buses and trains to maintain the distancing practices in place now.
No transit system in the country has the capability to run a lot more service than they were running just before the pandemic. There are some situations where you could limit the number of people entering the station, but fundamentally, an urban public transit system is not one that you can do a lot of controlling of who enters it.
So then what?
So then we default to customers must take responsibility for themselves and their safety, should wear a face covering. And as best they can, they should try to keep away from other people on the system.
And all that still depends on how many people will actually use transit or continue to stay away. One thing for sure, it's another guess. Joanna Remiliotis, CBC News, Toronto.
Street food can now hit the road in Toronto. Mayor John Tory announced this afternoon that all vendors will be permitted to get back to business. They were forced to shut down due to COVID-19. The city says food trucks, ice cream trucks, and other street vendors can start selling again if they follow the rules. That includes making sure physical distancing measures are implemented for customers and health and safety precautions are in place for staff.
We are surprised to see things coming back this quickly, and it just shows the resilience of the Toronto real estate market.
Coming up next, how Toronto's red-hot housing market is making a big comeback during COVID-19 and who is buying homes in a pandemic. We'll be right back. After a dismal April due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Toronto's real estate market saw a bit of a resurgence in May. A new report suggests that homes are not only selling, they are still commanding top dollar. Greg Ross has more.
The real estate market isn't exactly breaking records, but it definitely has new life.
The hope is back. The deals are being done so you can breathe a little bit.
Real estate agent Andrea Feldman says after the market came to a near standstill in April, homes in Toronto are starting to move again.
I think we thought it would be a longer road, So I do think that we are surprised to see things coming back this quickly, and it just shows the resilience of the Toronto real estate market.
According to the Toronto Real Estate Board, the total number of sales more than doubled from April to May. And while they're still down considerably compared to last year's sales numbers, they're growing by the day.
I think there was a certain percentage of people who had disposable income, weren't really concerned about whether they'd lose their job or not, and were looking for deals, absolutely.
Real estate broker Joe Machado says deal hunters may have been hoping to take advantage of a down market, but there was enough demand to keep prices up.
The buyers are back out, and sellers are getting their asking price, in some cases more.
In fact, the Toronto Real Estate Board says the average selling price for all home types combined in May was actually up 3% over last year. Machado says there may be other factors drawing people into this market, like lower interest rates.
Typically, a bank will secure the rate for 60 days, in some cases 90. And so, yeah, they lock in the rate, which is the smart thing to do. And effectively, you've got 30 to 60 days to look for a property.
Feldman says the pandemic may have also pushed the market back a couple of months, meaning people who were looking to buy before it started, when the market was still hot, have now returned.
So I think all we're going to see is a prolonged or spring market. So I think we'll have a busier summer than we normally see as well.
She also says it's not just the demand that's on the rise. The supply is also starting to go up as well, with many people being forced to sell because of lost income related to the pandemic. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
A teenager is facing charges tonight after a senior was stabbed in Oakville. Police say the victim is a 79-year-old woman. She was attacked at a home near 8th Line and Highway 403 around 8 this morning. The woman was taken to hospital with what are believed to be stab wounds. Investigators say she is expected to survive. The suspect fled the scene but was arrested a short time later on a bus in Peel region. A 15-year-old male is now facing charges. Police say the victim and the suspect are known to each other. And police in Peel are also looking for 3 people they allegedly accused of stealing puppies and assaulting the owner. The victim was selling these 2 puppies to 3 men on Monday evening near Bovaird and Conestoga Drive, but the suspects allegedly assaulted the victim, took the puppies, and fled in a white Hyundai. The victim tried to retrieve the puppies when the vehicle was stopped at an intersection, but the car accelerated away and dragged the victim for a short distance. Police say the suspects may be attempting to sell the puppies in the Toronto area. The GTA was hit with 2 thunderstorms last night that brought lots of rain and even hail. A new study from Canadian climate researchers suggests that human actions are contributing to extreme rainfall in North America, and there could be more of these events in Canada's future. Tashana Reid has the story.
In cities across Canada, extreme rainfall has contributed to flash floods. In the last decade, water damage claims averaged more than $500 million a year, much higher than before. A new Canadian report warns, expect to see more of this.
In North America, we have seen an increase in the frequency and severity of heavy rainfall events. And this is largely due to global warming.
The report reviewed 50 years of data and found increases in heavy rainfall were consistent with climate change model predictions. As warming continues, researchers say extreme rainfall will be more frequent and more severe.
In a world without human influence on the climate, a precipitation event that would occur about once every 100 years on average would occur about once every 20 years on average in our current climate.
This is the first study to zero in on North America.
This is discernibly happening on a North American scale that helps to bring that closer to home.
The implications range from the safety of Canadians to how buildings are designed.
You're going to have to make those repairs, and so then the building becomes more expensive to maintain. The probability of a loss of life, if we're talking about flash flooding, becomes higher as a consequence.
And cities needing to rethink how they design communities.
Municipalities are beginning to update their stormwater management guidelines, official plans, zoning bylaws.
This expert says Canadians need to adapt quickly.
And I think the study really underscores that we as Canadians have to get ahead of this and invest in preparedness to flood events now, today. Time is not a luxury.
Without significant action to emissions caused by humans, experts say costs will keep piling up. Tashana Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
And Colette, you talk about that all the time, these once-in-a-decade events happening every year now.
Yes, becoming much more frequent. That's right, Dwight. We're familiar with the flooding. We're familiar, too, of seeing our higher water levels. And it's really important to look at the big picture, as you saw in that report there from Tashana. But just if you take a look at the individual things of what happened, it doesn't always tell the story. So we're so early into June, it doesn't really work to look at that. I just thought we'd look at last month then. On average, we would see close to 75 millimeters, and last month we were way below average. You see how when you're just looking at one reporting station, this is from Pearson, kind of looking at a 30-year period of what the average would be, it doesn't tell you the whole story of what's happening with the climate here. Current temperatures, this is how they look. We are still sitting at 27 degrees. It's a very nice evening that we have on our hands, 26 in Oshawa and Hamilton and in St. Catharines as well. You factor in some dew points that are starting to creep up a little bit, so we have a bit of humidity. Your humidex values there, many they're hanging on right at 30. There's that active weather I was pointing out earlier in the show towards Kingston. That's kind of pushing off now and headed over the lake and then stateside. And then what we'll be seeing is a quiet night tonight. You know, our sun sets at 8:54, so we're getting a lot of daylight here. We got some time still to enjoy this quiet evening after last night was such a rock and roll one with those storms. And as we look ahead towards tomorrow morning, a lot of sunshine for us there too. It's not really until we get to Friday that we're going to see some changes with some active weather. So Thursday looks very good. Friday starts out nicely, but then as a cold front approaches, we'll start to see some late afternoon showers and maybe some thunderstorms. That potential is in there as well. So again, that's late on Friday. So we got a day and a half or more that you're going to see some nice conditions, and the weekend doesn't look bad either. Overnight tonight, your temperatures look like this. So still running almost, well, 4 to 5 degrees above seasonal. Tomorrow afternoon, at least 28. We may hit 29 in some areas in the GTA. I've certainly put that in for you there in St. Catharines, and into Friday as well, 29, but feeling like we're in the low towards mid-30s. The humidity comes down towards the weekend, however, and we're going to see some really nice, comfortable conditions, a little cooler, back to seasonal, really, as we go towards Sunday, Dwight.
We'll take it. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
Like all tourism businesses, wineries are feeling squeezed by COVID-19. This is usually their busiest time of year, but with most people staying home and the border closed to tourists, vineyards are finding other ways to keep their wine flowing. Stacey Janzer explains.
I like big reds and I cannot lie.
Wineries like Crew have rushed to find inventive ways to engage with their customers. Michelle Turnbull started posting videos online to promote their wine.
So we started doing actually Wine Wednesday video tastings on our Facebook page and putting together little wine country packages for people so they could have a couple bottles of wine, some cheese, you know, a condiment or some sort of locally made item, and then baguette.
Keeping things as local as they can. Crew also has a new facility, but it's still currently off limits. They're working on their plans to make the opening safe once they're allowed to.
So we're going to think really hard about how we want traffic flow to go. One thing we will probably do is have tastings limited to smaller groups of people by reservation only, which in my opinion actually makes it a nicer experience for the consumer.
Down the road at North 42, customers can purchase wines at the front desk, and their bistro is available for pre-orders Thursday through Sunday.
We're, social or physical distancing. And we've got it marked out which way to walk, and even into the lavender store if you want to pick up some other items in the winery that are more retail related, not just wine. And the wines we've reorganized that you don't pick them up yourself. You basically just ask for what you want, and we get them for you from the back.
Most wineries at this point are making wine sales available online with delivery or curbside pickup, and they're relying on local customers now more than ever. In the meantime, the federal government is reallocating $30 million meant to attract foreign visitors to local marketing. The government is also setting aside around $40 million so tourism agencies in Ontario and Western Canada can adapt their operations. But there is no decision on how much local tourism organizations will receive. Stacey Janzer, CBC News, Harrow.
When we come back, a day in the life of helping Toronto seniors in some of the city's neighborhoods hard hit by COVID-19.
Maria, how are you? It's so good to see you.
I have to thank you, everybody. I feel crying. I'm happy that somebody cared for me. Very, very happy.
Seniors are the most at risk of dying from COVID-19. People in Toronto's Northwest are also statistically most at risk of catching the virus. Those two facts combined mean organizations helping seniors in Toronto's hard-hit neighborhoods are running flat out. Chris Glover spent the day with one of them.
Hi, Maria, how are you?
This is a visit Maria Soda looks forward to, not just for the donated meals, but it's the human interaction she's hungry for.
I'm happy that somebody cared for me.
We're gonna make 2 trips.
Shayna Piltz is the 30-year-old social worker making today's drop.
Be well, Angela. I'm happy to have that connection with them. You know, I'm happy to see them, see that they're still well and thriving even in these conditions. And I'm able to assist in that. So it does put a smile on my face. I am smiling behind the mask.
Since the 1970s, LumaCare, the organization she works with, has helped seniors in North York and North Etobicoke. Statistically, these northern neighborhoods have the highest rate of COVID-19 infections in Toronto. At the charity's headquarters, health screenings are mandatory and some rooms sit idle.
So there's still a lot happening. There's a lot of people here, there's a lot of work going on, but it's a different kind of activity. What are you guys doing right now to serve the community?
Right now, we have completely rearranged our programs. We have put so much time and development into this response center.
Exercise classes have gone virtual, and language lessons are online too. Meals remain their focus, now more so, once delivering 1,700 meals monthly.
Yep, that goes right in.
With the pandemic, it's up to more than 3,300 meals a month.
We are like a big family. We should stick together, especially on a time like this.
Despite the lonely and dangerous times, Maria Soda shares a sense of responsibility to keep others safe.
The mask, I don't like it, but I have to wear it. It's not just for me. It's for all of you. Because I'm a person to think not just for me.
Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
You tell them, Nora. After the break, today's Frontline Heroes. Stick around for that, and we'll be right back. With physical distancing rules in place, Geetha Yagendran and her son Shaylin wouldn't be able to have a party for his 9th birthday. But the staff at his Scarborough school decided to make sure it was still special. They paid him a visit.
Go down and say hi, not too close. Go, go, go. Oh my gosh. Guys, they're getting their shoes. I didn't do this. That is just really nice. Oh my gosh. What do you say? Oh my gosh.
Did you invite them?
That is amazing.
Did you see the smile on his face when he realized that was all happening for him? Thank you to the staff at Clearly Public School for continuing to make children smile. And happy belated birthday, Shaylin. Oh, that was so sweet.
Happy birthday. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Love that rendition, too, of Happy Birthday.
With the kazoos.
Yeah, it was awesome. You know, something else I love is that we're getting so much daylight right now. Daylight hours, long days. Yes, just having a look at today. Now, the sun is going to set at 8:54, but we've got 15 hours at 18 minutes of daylight. Summer officially begins coming up on the 20th. We're going to have almost 15 and a half hours of daylight. And then I just want to ignore this over here. But that would be winter, the first day of winter coming up there in December. And look at the contrast of what we get in daylight, you know, just under 9 hours there. But this is what we're headed towards. We're on the right, going in the right direction, right? We are as well for what's happening this evening. Really nice, comfortable conditions. Temperature coming down a little bit. It will be here over the next hour or so, but still we'll have clear and quiet conditions. 14 degrees the overnight low, and then tomorrow afternoon another steamy one. So highs are going to be 28, maybe 29 degrees with a lot of sunshine to start. A few clouds into the afternoon, but still a very quiet day, and that's a good thing. And then for Friday, that's when we're going to see some changes. A little bit, we'll have a front approaching, and so into the afternoon and early evening hours, the risk of seeing some thunderstorm activity coming in once again, but it is going to be a little bit hotter even, and still a little more humid. And then into the weekend, those temperatures, the dew points come down and the temperatures come down, so really comfortable weekend ahead, right? With lots of daylight hours.
With all the craziness going on in the world, we will take the extra vitamin D. We need it to make us feel better right now. Thank you, Colette.
We sure do.
That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Mike Wise has your next local news tonight at 11 after the National. We'll see you back here tomorrow. We're going to leave you with some shots of our skies last night during 2 thunderstorms that made their way through the GTA. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.